Hi Madhujit, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Amit?
All well. Thanks for asking. And we are live. First of all, my apologies to the audience that we're joining the session. We're starting the session 10 minutes late due to some technical glitch. But I think that now we are loud and clear.
So, are you able to hear me well?
I very much audible.
All right, great.
So how have you been, Madhujit? How 2020 has been for you?
2020, with God's grace, I should say that we were. I, uh, given the circumstances, we were good. Yeah.
Perfect. That's good to know
Yeah.
that actually.
Yes.
And how 2021 is treating you?
Amazing. It's been really, really a hectic start of the year. I mean, what we say is a good problem to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think that let's not delay and let's start with the session. There are a couple of people who've already joined in the session. So welcome all to this wonderful evening and a fantastic 2021. I'm your host Amit Kapoor and super excited to welcome you all to another thrilling edition of 2021 VAR Story, in which usually we discuss crucial aspects of both personal and professional lives by drawing upon the lives of today's top business leader, experts, and influencer from across the globe. So, to begin with the session, we would like to kind of honor our esteemed guest who has joined us today to facilitate this fantastic vast story discussion. We are eager and excited to welcome Madhujit Singh. Welcome, Madhujit.
Thank you so much. It's absolute pleasure to be here with you. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so looking forward
Likewise,
to a very
it
interactive conversation.
absolutely it's an honor, Madhujit, to have you here on our platform.
Thank you so much.
And I expect all the audience, to all the viewers, to ask any questions, whatever that you think are relevant to the topic. We'll try and kind of incorporate all your questions here. And Madhujit is with us today. I'll just give a short introduction of her, and then we'll brief a little bit about what is the topic all about today. And then we'll pick up questions. And during the entire conversation, we'll try and kind of pick up questions from the audience as well. So do put your questions on the comment section. So as we said, as you all know, that we have Madhujit Singh with us today. She's a vibrant woman leader with an equally exciting career, which celebrates uniqueness, embrace differences, and vigorously works to incorporate the beauty of diversity and inclusion into corporate and workplace. She's a thriving expert consultant with sheer expertise in the area of conscious bias and developing women at work. Despite being skilled professional, her dense knowledge on topics of diversity and inclusion and her enthusiasm to keep working to transform worksphere to be a happier and a more inclusive place have truly made her a leader we always look up to hear from. The topic for today's discussion is unconscious bias, how it affects us more than we know. I think this particular topic has catered to much attention in the contemporary professional world, wherein one side workplaces are becoming more aware of necessities to incorporate diversity with inclusiveness and make a friendly work environment to all the employees. Yet on the other side, if in case we look at, we are not fully aware of how to deal with something like biases, our conscious mind force. And right now, to kind of decode about these unconscious biasness that we have and which we are not really sure of how to kind of handle or take care of these, we have Madhujit as an expert upon this topic, and I hope each of us leave the sessions with learning outcomes that can indeed bring about fair chance uh, changes, small or big. So I will not take much of your time. Let's begin with the session today. So welcome, Madhujit.
Thank you. So before I deep dive into the concept of unconscious bias, I'd like to talk about the word bias itself. So bias itself, the moment I say you're biased, it means, if I say Amit is biased, it means that Amit is not a good guy. So there's a bad person phenomena associated with the word bias, but bias is actually all of us. We are all are biased. Bias are shortcuts that our mind has created. So unconscious is something that we are not aware of, conscious that we are aware of. While driving, I don't use my conscious mind to drive. It just happens. So that's my bias, and that's something which I'm proud of. So,
Absolutely.
so well, let's understand bias is something which is we can't call it good or bad, but it is. It's the behaviors that we need to monitor on that.
Absolutely right. And broadly, if in case I say that when you mentioned bias, we all are biased, right? Sometimes what happens is that there are conscious biasness and then there are unconscious biasness. Conscious, we can't really do much about it, but yes, at least unconscious biasness that we are not, and being innocent, we made some mistakes, right? We that biasness come on its own, right? So I think you very rightly said, and I just want to kind of quote an example here that if you stuck in a car park with a flat tire, right, and the chances that you would most likely to approach a man rather than a woman if you need assistance in changing it. So I think that is something innocently you do it. That is not meant to do it, but I think this is what exactly unconscious biasness is all about, right? When we actually learn stereotypes that are automatically unintentional, deeply ingrained with our beliefs, and universal and have ability to affect our behavior. So that's what unconscious biasness is more about. So, which is absolutely right the way that you mentioned. So let's start with the session with the first question that I have for you, Madhujit. So when it
Yeah.
comes to a question of unconscious biases, right, which we just fairly discussed, and we regard of the fact that there is a realm of unconsciousness attached to it, right? Uh, Something that we don't intend to do. Does this consideration happens to lift some responsibilities or blame off our shoulder when the unjust action or behavior we have shown was not realized? So what I usually feel is that uh, when we talk about unconscious biasness, is it we try and defend our actions by saying this thing it's unconsciously being done, or that's there our mind is being trained to do it this way only?
Yeah, so let me break this question up first of all. First of all, we must remember that at any point in time, our brain is exposed to about 11 million bits of data. Our
Uh-huh.
conscious mind has capacity to process 40 bits. So 11 million minus 40 is what our unconscious mind processes. So there's something
Wow.
that doesn't come into an awareness and a lot
Wow.
of data there. Now, when we talk about unconscious biases, so, I mean, if we look at the evolution of mankind, if I see, let's say, if I see a snake, I'm not going to stand there try to evaluate whether the snake is poisonous or not. I'm going to just run. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
thinking, should I run? Should I not run? But the
Yeah.
bias plays in and it runs. So, bias is actually helping us survive. The whole human species has survived because of these biases, these shortcuts that our mind has created.
Yeah.
And much later, I'll think, okay, the snake was like that, or it could have been poisonous, or whatever. But that's how our mind works. Now, I mean, if I take a context of a social situation where I go for a party, I've been invited by the host and not very many people I know about. When I walk into the party, the host is busy entertaining all the guests, and I can't expect the host to be with me all the time. So probably I'm going
Absolutely.
to go out and look for people like me and gravitate towards that group where people are like me. So
True.
that's a
True.
bias which happens. I'm not going to consciously think about it, but just comfortably go there and start the conversation. So
Yeah.
in that situation, biases are fine. I mean, there's it also helps me protect. I may not gravitate towards somebody who looks dangerous.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
protects me. But when at workplace or any other situation, when it impacts my decision making, that's where the problem comes. And I will not know what I don't know. If I
Yeah.
don't hire more women for my organization, I don't realize it unless I go and check my data. Once I check my data, is that when I understand that. So I can't leave it to unconscious. In workplaces, I need to be conscious. I need to become
Conscious.
aware that these are possibilities that can happen, and it's impacting my workplace decisions. So I mean, I can't shrug it off saying that it's unconscious, so I can't do it. I just have to go back and look at my data in hiring, in promotion.
Yeah.
Is there any group that I'm not giving that opportunity to?
But again, there are a lot of types of unconscious biasness, right? And I think that when you journalized all these instances in the examples you just quoted, I think that you touch base a lot of different unconscious biasness that in a corporate, at a workplace, or even in a society that we actually uh, uh, again, our mind is being trained, and these are some stereotypes that we can't change, right?
Yes.
You very right on that. So I think that let's move to the set of questions that we have, which actually try and help us to understand the different kind of bias that we have, which are prevailing in the workplace and in the society. So my
Yes.
next question is about affinity bias, right? Which refers to when you unconsciously prefer people who share similar qualities, and you like someone, right? So the way that you just mentioned, when you are in a group, right, and you're in a circle, and when you actually see that you have a tendency, right, you try and kind of engage with those people which you think are like-minded, right?
Yes.
And this automatic, yeah. So I wanted to understand. So when we consider this affinity bias, right, wherein people favor people who fits, probably let's talk about it more towards a work culture. When people favor employees or candidates who fit into the work culture better than other, right? Do you think that's a justified way of doing it? And what does the disadvantages of unconscious bias reveal at workplace and society because of affinity bias?
Okay, so I'm going to start with diversity and inclusion. We all know, or there is enough data which is available that diverse teams produce better results. Diverse organizations have do better in all marks of profitability, whether it is shareholder, or whether it is actual profit, net profit, gross profit, everywhere, or even innovation. A diverse team gives us better results. Now, what happens if we are if we try and get people who are like us, which happens a lot in the organizations, like us, we are in the garb of culture fit. We are actually getting people who think like us and who
Yeah,
behave like
yeah,
us and look like us sometimes also. And we've
sure.
got enough examples even in the corporate world. I mean, even the younger generations would know. We've got a whole lot of examples since the whole entire corporate world. I'm sure even the younger generation today connects with the world called Nokia, company called Nokia. They connect with Polaroid.
Yeah,
They connect.
yeah,
So these companies, where are they? They just disappeared from the face of earth. Why did?
absolutely.
It's because the top brass was identical looking, you know, probably even the same height and same Ivy League schools,
Yeah,
where they fail to see what are the changes happening in the market. So if we have diversity, only then we are able to get the market intelligence, because my customers are diverse. So unless I get that, another example, if you look at it, uh, is one very beautiful example which I like to quote is iOS. Such a fantastic product, iPhone. So initially, what happened was when the initial 5 to 10% videos, that YouTube videos which were taken on iOS, were
mm,
upside down, and it didn't take them long to understand it's because the left handies using the other way
yeah,
around came
yeah,
upside,
yeah,
and it was a minor thing that they had to do in their software to get the video right.
yeah,
Because that team did not have any left-handed person, nobody even thought about it as that's a possibility that can happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If you're rejecting somebody just because they're left-handed, look at the kind of opportunity we are losing out for the product over there.
yeah, yeah,
Somebody like me, I mean, while I've taken an extreme example, same is the case with other PWDs or people who don't have a site. If so, so we have to understand people who are like us will give us product for people like us. Even in car, if you're aware, the airbags were designed for men. It's not that the people who were designing it never it thought that okay, it doesn't matter if my daughter, my wife, my sister, my mother are unsafe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that it doesn't strike them that there is a possibility otherwise also. So when we include people like us, when we hire people like us under the name of culture fit, we're actually bringing in, we are
You're
we
not
are
changing anything. Yeah. So
suppressing innovation, and we are suppressing products which are more relevant to the market spaces.
no, I agree, and I think that's indeed something which is very important. We all need to understand. We need to welcome people with different qualities, because then only you'll get a value add in the group or in the organization or in the community or a society. Thank you for really making it so simple with example to understand. There is a very interesting question that I have got from Pragati Bali. Thank you, Pragati, for putting this question. I think that uh, uh, so this is what exactly that I wanted to understand too, right? First of all, this unconscious decisions that we usually take, right? So are these really unconscious decisions?
It is. I'll give you an example again with an example. In the
Sure.
70s, sure, most of you must have heard about it. In the 70s, what happened was we are talking about the US context where the orchestra was mainly men, 5% were women.
Hmm.
And what happened then was it was known that men are better musicians. So there was a
Okay.
panel sit, and the person who's wanting to be part of the orchestra would walk in, play the instrument, and the panel would give marks. Nobody consciously thought that she's a woman, so I should give her low marks. But it just happens because we're so biased, we're so stereotyped against it. In one of the instances, when they had to put a curtain because the contestant was related to one of the panelists, so they put
Okay.
a curtain so that, and each contestant was called out by numbers and not by names. So then they realized they had more women coming out. So nobody thinks that okay, she's a woman, let me reject her. But it's so deep rooted thought that women are not so good at music, so when they listen to the music they give as many marks, and
Yeah.
that's how.
Yeah.
So it's actually unconscious. A lot of it is unconscious. Of course, conscious is there when we say, okay, women are not good at maths, or women are not good at investments, or women are not good at driving. That's a conscious bias, but a lot of it is workplace biases. A lot of it is unconscious.
Yeah, I think that I truly agree, or I would say that I fairly agree with you on this, Madhujit. And Pragati, to answer your question, I think that she very well and simplified, she explained it, because a lot of things that we do uh, uh, without even giving it a thought to it, right? So that's make it unconscious effort, right? So you do not really use too much of your brain while taking certain decisions, and you just take a very prompt decision, right? And this could be situational based, right? When Madhujit has been quoting an example of a corporate, definitely there have been situation wherein in not even in corporate or in your normal everyday life, there are certain decisions that you take which are very instant, which doesn't allow you and give you that much of time to think about it, right? And then also that you make some decisions which are fairly biased, right? And those decisions are basically your how your brain works. The reason being because this is how exactly that your brain is being trained on, right? Uh, so 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 there is a term which called unconscious biasness, and definitely these biasness which comes in sometime because of their experiences. There are ways, as in I think that during this entire topic we're going to cover a lot of different types of biasness, right, which actually can help you to understand it better. I hope, Pragati, you've got your response from Madhujit. Let's quickly move to another question that I have, and this again related to something which we've been just talking about it. That so my next question to you, that how much of the unconscious biases we make are inherent stereotypes and prejudgments that we hold as an individual. So, and are there other out of hands factors that lead to these behaviors apart from what faulty thoughts that we choose to believe in? So I think that it is very relatable to what she asked. Is like, So these stereotypes or prejudgment that we actually hold, right? These are basically not in our hand, right? So that's what we always say. So are there any other factors which actually create such kind of subconscious mind?
So a whole lot of things, our upbringing, our schooling. I mean, of
Yeah,
course, that has fed
lot of
into us
factors.
prejudices, or the media that we go through, the understanding. A simple thing like if I say I want to Google something, I want to
Yeah,
say, war stories, and it
yeah,
gives me stories, or war stories for women, and it will
yeah,
give me so many stories, and war stories, it will give me so many. So
yeah,
now I compare, I said no, war stories only for women, because that's the
yeah,
search engine that I've given.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Google is promoting what we think is
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And another thing, I mean, I think I'll take another example of confirmation bias. I look at information, all the information is available, but what confirms my previous beliefs is what I'll pick up. So that's where
Hmm.
stereotypes come in. And in our country, the unfortunate bit about the caste system, we have the regionalism, we have language that we speak, how good or bad English we speak. We have a stereotype. Somebody who speaks not so good English, my assumption is they may not fit into my organization.
Yeah, yeah,
Unless I really hire them or something. So stereotypes come in, or somebody who comes from a humble background, I have my notions around them, things like that. And we see these stories, we kind of aggrandize that some driver's daughter became an IS officer, and so became an IS officer, and things like that. Aggrandizing also, again, perpetuates those stereotypes
yeah.
sometimes, which is again, but we cannot not celebrate them, but otherwise they're also perpetuating the stereotypes that a driver's daughter cannot become an IS officer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yes, largely it is prejudices and stereotypes, but also they get
There are other
enhanced
factors too. Yeah.
under high pressure, under stress. All that gets enhanced. So
Oh, okay.
under pressure to take a decision, highly likely that my decision will be very biased.
True,
Under
true.
stress, people who don't, if you've not had a good night's sleep, please don't take a major decision of your life, because it is going to be highly prejudiced.
Yeah, I think that you very rightly said, because then you would not be able to kind of take a wiser decision, as you said. So it is always, yeah, yeah, yeah. It has
So
been always taken by your subconscious mind, which might not calculate or respond back to the decision that you have taken, as in how biased it is or not. Yeah, absolutely
And
right. I totally.
I'd also like to introduce another concept called System 1 and System 2, which was
Okay,
popularized by a Nobel laureate, Daniel Kahneman. The System
okay,
1 is a fast thinking brain, and System 2 is the slow thinking or logical brain. So a
okay.
lot of decisions are taken by System 1, and System 2 is the lazy brain. So only if it's brought into action, it will take the decision.
Big
System 1
decision.
goes by prejudice, biases, shortcuts, neural networks, everything. System 2, which goes a little more deeper. So typically,
Okay.
with it's an important decision, we would recommend that whatever
Use both
comes,
the system.
yeah, no, whatever comes first to your mind, reject that. Go in for the second and
Okay.
the third. Yeah.
No,
So you,
absolutely right. I think because your first instinct might be biased, might not be biased, right? But definitely when you think through it, you'll be able to take a better decision. You very
absolutely.
rightly said. So I think that during your conversation, when you were explaining this, you just mentioned about one term, which is confirmation bias, right?
Yes.
And referring to this term, confirmation bias refers to how people primarily search for bits of evidence that back up their opinions rather than looking at a whole picture. It leads to a selective observation. So a common example is an interview process you just mentioned, right? That lies heavily reliant on the interviewer's experience with people,
True.
right? And I'm sure that a lot of people would have experienced it too, and the interviewers would have also experienced it, right?
Yes.
So while yeah, so while taking these decisions or while taking these interviews, right? I think how does one skillfully apply experience without letting unconscious biases gravitate in the process. So
Yes.
how is it possible? Because that happens, as in even if in case I have been into recruitment industry for so long now, and I've experienced it, that a lot of time that we actually have some set of experiences in our some instances or some evidences that we had in the past, which came as an assumption, and we will try and kind of take those assumptions and take it forward for the next individual's interview. So, how do you think that skillfully we can eliminate this unconscious biases here in the process?
So I'll quote yet another example here.
Oh,
So in this again US context where the interview, it was a interview for I think some senior cop, and
okay.
what happens for that particular location when the interview was happening, I asked they asked the interviewer, they gave hypothetical resumes and told them that one resume was that of a male and one was for a female, and the one resume had somebody from a very good educational institute,
Okay.
and the other with very good experience. Okay,
Yeah.
so invariably when the interview was happening, they were looking at for a cop position, there was
Yeah.
more tendency to pick up the male resume, irrespective,
Yeah.
because they used it interchangeably. They changed the resume names and all. So
Okay.
irrespective, they were picking up the male resume. So when they were asked that why did you choose this one, they said because if the male had good educational qualification, they said yeah we needed more education for this
Technically.
particular, and otherwise we needed more experience. Now what they did subsequently was, before the interview happened or before they proposed the resumes in the next level, they actually asked them to tick what is more important for this, education or experience. And
Yeah.
when the interviewer ticked which one was important and the resumes were presented, they were more more rational in their choices.
Yeah.
Then they
Yeah. Yeah.
unconsciously pick up a male resume. They picked up that. So just before the interview, if we put that filter, what is more important? What am I looking at? And then get into the interview and make it more structured, is there are higher chances that we will be less biased. Biases we cannot eliminate completely,
Yeah.
but our attempt is to minimize them in our decisions.
Absolutely.
So that we put filters. Just before that, put the criteria. What is the criteria? And then the chances are that we'll get better decisions during interviews.
Sure. I think that's a brilliant practice that you just mentioned. If in case you'll probably put a checklist beforehand, you know what exactly that you're looking forward. And trust me, and it's just the example that you quoted. There are a lot of organizations who have started doing that, right? They have started removing the name of the applicant in terms of so that the interviewer could not gauge that what gender the person is, right?
Yes.
And then it's gonna be an unbiased. So I have experience with a couple of my clients who have done that, right? And the decisions, and trust me, uh, now when the outcome has come in, right? Managers have really felt uh, uh, a major shock to see that probably they felt with the kind of an experience that a person have mentioned, they thought that they are hiring a male individual, right? But later that they found that this was basically a female. I think that gender bias is also another very important aspect when we're talking about biasness here. And in the
Yeah.
corporate world, there are certain time that we actually see that diversity. Uh, uh, and again, let's move to another important aspect when you mentioned about gender bias, because gender bias is simply a preference of one gender over the other. That's what I can understand, right? Because certain jobs people have, there is a stereotype, right, which says that there are certain jobs which are meant for men and there are certain jobs which are meant for women, right?
Yes.
And we have bifurcated it completely. So when we talk, we often stand upon so you have time and out been and yourself, which I wanted to kind of quote it here, that you have been time and out been an advocate of women empowerment. And thus this particular question is on the topic of gender bias at workplace, right?
Yes.
What are the best advices for corporate to extend a hand in diversity and inclusion for women and the varied, diversified, yet cohesive working professionals in our country? So, what do you think that how can this? What are the best advices that you want to give it to the corporates?
So first of all, I would request everybody and anybody, please stop using the word empowerment. Let's talk
Yeah.
about enablement. Women
Yeah.
create an
Equality.
environment conducive to development of and growth of women. Now, the culture, irrespective of which culture we belong to, most of the statistics that I quote is of Western world, not of India.
Yeah.
In Western world, we're talking about women earning 77 cents per a dollar that a man earns. In Western world, there's a wage gap. There is other, maternity bias, which is there, that if she's a mother, then she'll not be too committed to her work, and things like that. The gender bias topic is a huge topic. Now,
Yeah.
empowering a woman who's a mother would not help. We need to enable the environment. We need to empower the managers. We need to create an environment which is conducive for her to grow, where people look at her work and not about her maternity.
Absolutely.
So, and
Absolutely.
a example, if you remember in 2016, when in the presidential debates of the US, Hillary Clinton
Yeah.
against Mr. Trump. So when Hillary was giving a speech,
Yeah.
even reporters, and here we must note it is not a man having a gender bias against women. It is the entire society having a bias against women. So as a woman, I have the same biases as you have as a man against women. And so when Hillary Clinton was giving her speeches, the length of her skirt and the size of her heel was more mentioned than the content of her speech. And the reporters could be man or a woman, it doesn't matter. And that's how we have that's the biases that we carry. How do
Yeah.
we actually start looking the content of her work and not about the length of the skirt, or not about her motherhood, or not about her relationships, and not about, and when it's not a woman, not about their sexuality, not about their if they're a trans person, or we don't look at that at all. How do we just look
Yeah.
at the work that they do?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely right.
I think the training needs to be done more to the environment rather than the person themselves, the minority group, whether that's a woman or a trans person or a gay or a lesbian or anybody that we can say.
But since you just mentioned about this is basically the community, right? So we need to kind of go ahead and have a better education system, which actually could, yeah, so which could actually absorb these biasness, and people should not be biased. So that's
That's
basically typically when we're talking about a society. But I'm talking about when we actually talk about corporates, yeah, right?
yes.
What advices do you think that a corporate, or what steps that a corporate should take to ensure that their organization has to be more inclusive and diversified. So, are there any particular advices that you wanted to give it to corporates to have a better diversified professional workplace?
Yes, so go back, look at your data, first of all. Even corporates which say we have 50% women, if they look at data, the leadership will have only 8% women. It's
Yeah,
the
agreed.
bottom line which has like maybe 60% women. So go back and look at your data. Not only how many you're hiring, but how many are leaving, how many are going to the next level.
Yeah,
When we go back and look at data is when we can have our systems in place, and we can train people, we can do that. Otherwise, having a unconscious bias training for all the managers is a very good thing to have, but will not yield results. If I tell you you're biased against women, you may say, all right, I am biased, now what? How, what are the bias? It's just like saying respect women. What do you mean by
yeah,
respect? You have a different
yeah,
definition, I have a different definition.
yeah. True, true, very,
So,
very true.
so going back, first of all, is going back to data. Once you identify where the leakages are, then have specific roadmap of how do you do that map. But have your diversity and inclusion goals. Just having the numbers doesn't
Yeah,
help unless the
absolutely.
voices is the next level. So start with data, capture data and data at different levels, and then look at how are we going to, what's our roadmap? I mean, what's our goal and how do we reach there?
Yeah,
So
sure. True, true, absolutely right. And I think you fairly said it right that we need to kind of have the entire thing been jotted down, identify where exactly is the challenge. Are you even not? what kind of a diversity that you really require in an organization, and then you'll be able to kind of take steps. And it is a continuous process. It is not something that you can probably go ahead and so that's what my personal belief, because a lot of organizations have been spending a lot of money in terms of doing these webinars, sessions in terms of diversity and inclusion. But I feel that somehow it's a continuous process, right? You need to kind of go ahead and do it on a very regular basis. Consistently, you need to invest in individuals, and it has to come from the top. It has to come from the top management to the that, because once they will have that kind of a culture being built in the organization, because they actually build in culture, right?
Absolutely.
So once the message comes from there, I think everybody follows it.
Yes, yes, that's true.
Yeah,
And just giving you an example of recruitment. If you look at recruitment, now I'm saying that I want diversity, and my recruiter says we don't have CVs for women. How do you choose? So the whole point is that they'll say that okay, should we compromise on the scores? That
yeah,
compromise on the quality. Now,
yeah,
can we identify sources where we can get more CVs? If my hit ratio for women is 40% against 60% for men, so can I increase the number of CVs for women?
yeah,
Can,
yeah.
can I source it from different sources? So looking at which stage is the leakage, whether it is at sourcing, recruitment, interviewing, or at which stage the leakage, or offer acceptance, at which stage is the leakage? And then we
Yeah,
can work on
absolutely.
that area. How do we work in that area?
Absolutely. And one more thing which I want to add on here, you very rightly said, I think that we need to identify the leakage. So sometimes it is not during the interview process or the sourcing process. It is the funnel also which has a challenge. There are a lot
Absolutely.
of time that we see, and I have personally volunteers, and actually I wanted to kind of go ahead and encourage a lot of female leaders here, women here, who that I feel that have a lot of potential, but sometimes they get so engrossed in their family commitments, right? They don't take up, they do not take that courage to step up and again rejoin at any stage of their life, right? They can always do that. And I think that is
Absolutely.
also our society has to encourage. I think it's just not the society or just not a female has to be need to take on their own the step. I think that the family members like us as a husband or a brother or other members in the family, they should also encourage more female to move out and start working, right? Potentially I think
That's
that's going to make a lot of difference, because then it will create a bigger funnel as well.
absolutely, and that's exactly what the word enablement comes in. That you
Yes,
enable
yes.
the environment rather than the empowerment.
Yeah. I think that that's something which we all need to do that. I think that all the audience, whosoever are viewing here, right, they should encourage every diversified population among themselves, their family, to encourage, move out, get over that fear, and stand bold like how Madhujit has took that stand and have been a strong leader and an expert. So moving to another interesting question that I have for you. I think more or less that we have covered lot of questions here. I have heard this term called conformity bias, which happens when your view are swayed too much by those of other people, right? So it occur because when we all seek acceptance from others, and this happens to everybody, right? I think that you try and follow a group, right? You don't put your
Absolutely.
opinions. You always
Yes.
hold back your opinions and so your viewpoints, right? Because you feel that the community might not accept it,
True. True. True.
right?
And
So
yes.
what are the best ways to practice assertiveness and individuality in a group or in a team environment that can help to do away with the conformity bias? Because till the time a person would not be able to kind of go ahead and put across his own characters sticks or opinions, I think that this person needs to, he's always been agreeing on whatever the group or the team is being really wanted to hear uh, about. So how can we take care of that?
That's actually a very very tough call. There's this movie called 12 Angry Men, if you've seen that, or
Yeah.
in Hindi it was Ek Ruka Hua Faisla. So
Uh-huh.
in that, there's a jury of 12 people who are supposed to decide whether the convict has committed the murder of his own father or not. So
Oh, okay.
see the movie, it's each one, they one by one they are raising their hands, agree, disagree. So most of them saying yes, done. Some of them say pass, and actually you can see how people are kind of yeah, even I agree. So there's one person who stands up and says no, I don't agree. I don't know he's committed or not committed, but I think it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah, it's worthy of discussion. Yeah.
Okay, 11 people have said committed, only one person stands up. And if you see how the movie progresses, he actually has to put forth arguments after arguments after arguments. And that movie brings out beautifully the concept of how conformity bias comes in. Because somebody else said yes, I said yes.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that we all have experienced it, right? There
Yes,
have been time during our education system, during our school days, we have done that, right? So, uh,
absolutely.
and
Even
even in corporates, everywhere, we all have done that in our life. And I
yes,
agree. And I think that people should open for discussions. People should go ahead and put their opinions and their inputs because that's something which is very important. And that's how that you'll be able to kind of get over this.
absolutely. So, one is very important thing is be confident about the subject that you are talking about when you are putting
Yeah,
forth. Let me do a lot of research before I put forth my idea. Let me
yeah,
have arguments ready because most of the time, what happens is one strong argument against me and I backtrack. Okay, let me not put my
yeah.
nose into it. It's okay, let them do whatever. And corporates have lost out on that because nobody stands up to a project which is a dying project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I agree with you. Okay, so I think we have another question from Pragati again, and
Okay.
she's been requesting us to put your inputs on managers should not be of the same team where he or she worked as a normal advisor at a point of time. Do you believe in that?
I don't.
Okay. So,
That's a very simple answer to say, but it's a very complicated. But because manager, when the manager goes up to the next level, it's very difficult for the manager to create that situation where he or she can be in the command or they can be in command of the others and take decisions because at that point we are all together, we are all kind of tapping
yeah,
each other, joking with each other and the pubs together. But after a certain point of time, if that person grows, it's not only that individual's responsibility to take up that and communicate the boundaries and communicate what his expectations are, but for the other people also to be able to accept. It's very difficult for them to accept that yesterday we were sitting in the pub and joking about somebody, and today I'm supposed to report to this individual. So for others also it becomes difficult, but it's a journey. It's a journey of conversations. It's not that overnight somebody becomes a manager and you accept them as a manager. It's a journey for the manager and it's a journey for you. If it's for the good of the group, look at what's the good part of it. If it's good, if even if it's been thrusted on you, I don't think we have much say in that. Somebody else becomes my colleague becomes a manager. I don't have a say in that. I have to
yeah.
accept. Look at
Absolutely,
what
but don't you think so that there is a lot of unconscious biases comes in here because he knows he's been there with you as a peer, he has worked with you or she has worked with you, and so if in case they become a manager, right? Uh, isn't it like that subconsciously things will come in? They have a pre-notion about an individual because they know that how as an advisor they have been working with them.
So it's again a tough call, but the same. Even if a new person comes in, just by looking at you, they have a
Absolutely. They
pre-notion
will also
about you.
have a perception. Yeah. So they are coming with a. I think that I agree to Madhujit here. I think that even if in case uh, a manager will be grown within his own team in terms of the peers that he has been working with, I think that he will do justice there better. The reason being because he knows what are your challenges, what are your problems, right? He knows your working style, right? And it becomes easy for him to manage it, right? Because manager doesn't always mean that he has to take a command of it. Nobody wants to, as a manager, nobody wants to micromanage it now.
I want to interrupt a little bit over here. When
Sure.
you said manager, you use he a lot. I think we should change that to they,
Sure,
which
sure.
includes he and he,
I
third gender as well. So if you put
No,
in
no,
word,
definitely.
be very conscious about it, because the moment we say manager, the word he gets associated with it, and that's a, not that you only have seen male managers. I'm sure in recruitment
Absolutely,
you.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I
So
agree. This is what exactly unconscious biasness is all about.
absolutely. So I think
And
I
I'll give you another very interesting example. So
yes,
when
please.
you actually type CEO, CFOs, or CTOs in your text box or on your iPhone, you will notice that an emoji will come in with a man in suit.
That is so true.
And this is shocking, isn't it?
Even today that happens. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, right now.
So that's exactly what I'm saying. Like we all have biases, and this manager and he, when you say it, it's very easy for me to get offended. How can you use he for a manager?
Yeah, yeah.
But instead, we know that it is a societal bias. It's not your bias. It's something even I have, not just you have. So when I call out for it, probably next time you're going to become conscious about it. So if
Yeah,
I don't call out, you're not going to be aware of it. But the
absolutely.
other part is, you could dismiss it and say, "Oh, Madhujit, why did you tell me? You shouldn't have done it in this public forum,"
No, no,
because
it is important because I think that we're talking about this. So what have exactly we've been, and this is very evident, right? We've been in the conversation, and think that it came out. The reason being because this is how exactly we have been doing it, right?
absolutely,
And this is what exactly that we do, and this is what exactly we've been referring to right now in this conversation. So absolutely right. What when you identified this, right? And again, I never meant to.
absolutely. So, no, what I was trying to bring forth is like if I call it out, the other person may get offended sometimes. So instead of getting offended, if we acknowledge it, only then we go beyond our biases. Otherwise,
Absolutely,
the bias
absolutely.
will continue. The bias will continue. If I get offended, why did Amit say this? He shouldn't have said it.
Yeah,
Or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So I think Pragati, we might have answered your question with an example. So strong example here itself. So Madhujit, it was such a wonderful conversation, and I think more or less we've covered all the questions for this topic today. And in case there are other questions which audience might have it, even the viewers who will watch this episode later, they can probably put those questions on the comment section. We'll pass it on to Madhujit, and Madhujit would respectively respond back to you on those questions with our responses. And I think it was brilliantly explained, and you made it so easy to understand the entire concept of unconscious biasness with superb and very simplified examples that you actually mentioned here. And I think that we all need to work hard to train our mind now, because subconsciously we make some wrong decision. And just I again to summarize the entire thing, that if in case we talk about that how to overcome this unconscious bias is trying kind of first of all, which Madhujit mentioned, is like recognize your unconscious biases first of all, because that is something very important. Because when you understand that there exactly that you are biased, right, then only you will be able to rectify it, right? So you need to recognize it first. And then another important part that she touched here is like take time during decision making process, right? Don't take instant decisions, because sometimes that happen is that when you take instant impromptu decisions, right, that might be biased, right? You don't intend to, but they might be biased. So take your time, where exactly that you have an option to take decisions, and you have time, ample of time. Please make decision making process taking enough time. And I think that's another important aspect that she mentioned is about whatever that we have done in this session, is that we touched base with a lot of different kind of biases here. And I think that that is something very important. Increase the exposure to biases. Then only you can understand where exactly that you went wrong, where exactly, so which is basically a biased decision,
Yes.
right? Because
So,
very small steps that we take in our life and we ignore it. We never realize that it has been a type of biasness, right? And thank you, Madhu. So there has been so many things that I've learned out of this session, and I definitely want to use it. All the
So,
learnings that I've seen, and I'm sure.
yeah, towards the end, I'd like to say that we've discussed a couple of biases today. There are about 150 of the biases identified, not all
Oh,
of them segregated but overlapping. But
yeah,
it doesn't matter these 150 biases. What matters is how is it impacting the decisions, whether
absolutely,
whether unconscious. If it's impacting my decision making, that's when I want to look at it. I don't need to go into technicality, whether it's affinity bias or conformity bias, nothing at all.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's something which is very important. And thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for shedding light on unconscious bias. Thank you for being here with us and given your valuable time and inputs. We are honored to have you here. Thank you very much, Madhujit.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me once again. And please, for everybody who's listening, please feel free to reach out to me through Elements and through this chat box, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madhujit, for making yourself available for all the audience. Thank you, all the audience. Have a lovely weekend. And thank you, Madhujit. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Take care.
You too have a